Welcome to Digital After Dark with your hosts, Matt and Andrew.
Hello, and welcome back to another Digital After Dark. This is episode 15, where we're looking at another web is possible. Tonight on Digital After Dark, Matt and I are joined by someone who should need no introduction as a previous guest on this podcast, but is now challenging the very foundations of how the modern web is built and optimized. Jon Crowder, the founder of Another Web is Possible, spent 15 years leading high-impact CRO and experimentation programs for major brands, delivering millions in measurable revenue and running hundreds of tests along the way. He knows exactly how the industry drives conversions, and he also knows the uncomfortable truth behind many of those wins. After years of watching optimization drift into manipulation, Jon realized the web didn't have to be a machine designed to extract value from people. It could be built around serving them. That belief became Another Web is Possible, a practice grounded in one simple principle: power to the users. Jon's mission is to prove that ethical optimization isn't just morally right, it's good business. When websites respect autonomy, reduce friction, and help people achieve their goals without trickery, trust grows, and trust, unlike manipulation, compounds into sustainable growth. So tonight, we dive into a vision of a digital world built with dignity and respect, a web where user needs come first, and exploitation isn't the cost of doing business, which I can say I fully believe in. Because as Jon reminds us, another web really is possible if we choose to build it. Jon, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's great to be back. You know, they say you play Digital After Dark twice in your career, once on the way up and once on the way down, and it's great to be back.
So what you're telling us, we have one more time with you because we've already done two before. This is now the third.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah, thank you so much for that really kind introduction. Something very, very close to my heart. I do believe that it is possible to build long-term sustainable business online. I do believe it's possible to do that entirely by treating people right and giving them good experiences and making them, for want of a better term, like your brand and trust your brand. I think that is possible, and there's ways you should do that.
Amazing. And I just realized we haven't even gotten a chance to hear from the other hosts of Digital After Dark. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
That's all right. I'm used to it by now. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good to be back. The first one of 2026 for me, I think. So it's good to be back in the saddle or on the couch, as was the case maybe.
Yeah, it is definitely the first of 2026, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to do a little bit better job in doing a proper introduction, and completely forgot to introduce the other host. So, a good way to start 2026.
That's perfectly fine. I think if this is number 15 now, hopefully people have figured out who I am.
Well, Jon, I know you've had a really long day, and I'm so glad that you get to join us after dark. So I figured we'll go ahead and jump straight into it. Now, I'm bypassing the normal, let's do an introduction of who you are, because people have already seen you on 2 episodes before. So let's just start off with, you founded Another Web is Possible as an ethical CRO consultancy focused on putting users first. What was the specific turning point that made you realize the industry needed this kind of alternative approach?
I'm going to talk about 2 points here. There's 2 moments that stand out to me, really clear moments. One is the one that made me go and do it on my own and not try and build it anywhere else. Made me want to go and start my own business to do this. And then the other one is I'm going to talk about why I think the world needs it specifically. First one's really clear. So I'm going to very, very quickly sort of go through my background. I spent 10 years at Sky and spent a lot of time there doing experimentation and optimization. I then spent 5, nearly 6 years at a marketing agency. as their digital experience started out on the tools, so to speak, and then became the digital experience director there. And in the sort of 5, nearly 6 years that I spent there, that business changed a lot. And when I really, really remember in year 2, I think it was, we were very hot on values and being values driven. And we had a request for proposal from the company Philip Morris International. Does anyone know what Philip Morris International do?
Yes.
Yeah,
Tobacco.
Yeah. And we turned it down because we didn't want to sell the world cigarettes and vapes at the time. We didn't believe that that was a good thing for the world, and we turned that contract down. And that was really important for the people working in the team, that decision, because it was us putting morals and ethics above profit. Because one thing I can tell you about Philip Morris International is they've got a lot of money, and they are not shy about spending it. Flash forward 5 years from then, or 4 years from then, and I had a sort of dawning moment where if that contract came along again, I would probably be forced into producing a proposal for it at the business that I was at. And so I realized that in order to set the rules and keep to that code of conduct I want to keep to, and make sure that I can, claim to have values and keep to them, I would have to go and build it myself. I would have to take on the risk as well as the core foundations and the decisions to be made. And that was important enough to me to want to go and do that. I do believe that I could make a success of it. And I personally wanted to be building businesses that I thought were good for the world, as well as just running businesses ethically. And so that was important to me. To this day, I won't take on gambling clients, for example, or clients that I believe are in industries that can't ever really be moral. And so the only way I can see myself being able to do that unrestrained is by running the show. That was one moment, really, really key, really important for me. The other one was in the process of pitching and selling to lots and lots of different businesses. I get to see what the rest of the marketplace looks like and what they do and how they do the work that they do. And I got to see a lot of practices that were, I'm going to say, missold, both to the people who they were selling them to, but also, and maybe even to themselves, maybe even in all their marketing, which is they are claiming to provide value through quick wins and best practice and like psychology influencing tech and stuff like that. And what they're dancing around there is a couple of things. Firstly, I think, and I've given lots of examples of this on LinkedIn, you can see this. There are lots of situations where you can do something which is not pleasant for a customer, but still wins an A/B test. And what I mean by that is, let's say you sell t-shirts and people come to your site and you've got an infinite amount of stock in these t-shirts, and you decide to tell people there's only one of these left, buy it now. Because you're trying to move that transaction forward, make it urgent. You're lying to that person. There's no way around that. You are misleading that person. If they find out, they will be so angry that you misled them. So you're your model there for that business and how it runs is built on hoping they never find out. Terrible way to run a business. There are so many examples of this where by either sleight of hand or psychological manipulation or like in-journey trickery, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be a dark pattern. It could just be really shitty behavior. You can move the needle in an A/B test that measures the last touch point of a conversion and still lose money downstream that you never measure. You never know. Because your A/B test says they bought more when we did this in the moment, and then downstream, they never come back. They complain. They return the item, whatever it may be. They exercise their rights to I guess, undo the transaction in some way. And you pay for it downstream. You do, because you've upset a customer who presumably you were hoping would come back again and again and again. And the only businesses that can behave this way and continue to get customers and keep customers are ones that have monopolies in the area that they're in, where there's no other choice. Because if you do treat customers like this, and it is an unpleasant experience, and they do feel misled, and they do feel that you've extracted something from them, there's a really, really strong chance that next time they're not coming back. They're going to someone else. Does that all make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it did remind me of a non-digital experience I had recently where I did feel completely misled by a restaurant where they said that they only had X amount of this duck remaining. And I purposely did not order the amount that I wanted because they said they didn't. And I went up to go get some more chili oil from them and saw somebody else walking away with a plate of duck. I'm like, well, you told me you had no more duck. So how does this person have duck? So I know it's not in a digital world, but whenever you were talking about that, that really came to my mind first because I felt manipulated, not told the truth, and really did put a sour taste in my mouth at that point because I felt like he purposely lied to me.
Yeah. It's really important. I mean, like those customer touch points are essential, but like you've got to remember, like in digital journeys particularly, which is becoming, if not the most seen part of almost every brand, even in-store brands, it is becoming the authoritative face of the brand. And so when that lies to you, they can't even say, oh, sorry, we're adjusting our policies and procedures and we're going to try and fix it. That is the brand itself, like, mistreating you.
I think it's not it's not directly related to testing, but I think you'll probably have an opinion on this as well. But and again, sort of anecdotal, like the restaurant thing, I cancelled delivery, and I've been spending, I probably don't want to admit this, but I will do, probably about £2,000 a year. We've got young kids, so it's really easy, you know, if we need something getting in or we're missing some ingredients, or that we can just get it delivered. And they didn't deliver something. In fact, no, they delivered completely the wrong order. It just wasn't what I'd ordered at all. And then refused to give me a refund. And I could not get in touch with a real person. So that was the thing that really got to me. They had an AI agent responding to me, and I was going back and forth, and I knew it was an AI agent, but it was pretending it was called Steve, and then it was called Holly, and then it was called Brian, and, you know, it was pretending to be a human, but I knew it wasn't a real human because of the responses I was getting, and it was just sending me around in circles, and I was getting more and more frustrated. I was putting things in, like, things that should have triggered the AI. Clearly, I was getting angry. I was saying things like, transfer me to an actual person, giving it really clear instructions, and it would not do it. So the final message I gave to the AI, and I don't know if anybody, it feels like nobody was monitoring it, because otherwise it wouldn't have been doing what it was doing. So I don't know whether anybody ever saw this message, but I just said, you've cost yourself £2,000 a year. This is ridiculous. You've delivered the wrong thing. You're refusing to refund me. I'm never using you again, and I will never use them again. And I will happily tell you guys never to use Deliveroo, and I'll tell all of my friends and family never to use them, because usually the service is good, but when it isn't, they've got AIs pretending to be people. You cannot reach an actual person to. And so if the problem that you have is something that they decide that they can't be asked dealing with, like, I've delivered you completely the wrong thing, they can just ignore it and just send you around in a circle until you give up. And I'm sure, absolutely certain, that somebody somewhere thinks that's a good idea, because it's saved them this money on customer service.
Yeah, for sure. And that'll be the business case behind it. That, and they've got to show that they're doing something with AI because they're a tech company and there's an expectation that you do. But I think, yeah, you've hit on something really interesting, which is there is a risk. There is a real risk that in the age of more enhanced automation, like perhaps easier automation in many ways than ever before, websites begin to feel, or experiences generally, it doesn't have to be a website necessarily, but any digital experience, whether you're connecting directly to, someone's Shopify feed via Google AI mode, or whether you go to their website, right? The feeling is the feeling of a bit of an abandoned strip mall, right? It's like it's got stuff there, but nobody is to be seen.
Very much so.
And that's a real difficult experience, because and the other thing as well is I don't want people to think it's a new experience either. The tech's different, but the experience of not caring enough to reply to your customers is old as the hills. Like, whether that was the only way you can get in touch with us is via email, and we might respond. Whether that is you phoning a cinema to book a ticket and then putting you through to a robotic IVR that cannot understand what you're trying to book, and you end up yelling at it. Like the tech might change, but the feeling hasn't, I don't think.
Well, you remember the testing that went on around hiding phone numbers?
Yep.
I won't necessarily say who, but hiding phone numbers because there was a direct cost when a customer rang up the contact center. So you would try hiding phone numbers and see if that got, if that got costs down, which of course it did. But it didn't particularly leave anyone very happy with the experience.
Like, for sure. Well, the other thing as well there is, like, you've almost definitely got to measure complaints as well. But if you're not doing that, you're not going to see what happens downstream. And then the other thing as well that I remember happening when I saw business doing that was there was a micro industry that sat outside of that company around scamming people by pretending to give them a phone number that was a premium rate number. So you created this like second issue through your own processes where that company, or where your customers will be trying to get in touch with you in good faith, legitimately, because they've got a problem they believe only you can solve with a person, not with an online flow, and are finding a website that looks legitimate but isn't you, and are paying £60-70 for a phone call that they don't see until months later, only for you to say, it's not us, can't help you. But they're still mad at you. They're still mad as hell at you, because if you've just made the phone number available,
because it's a situation that you engineered.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like, even if you didn't create the outcome, you create the environment where the outcome could exist.
Create the circumstances. Because what's the point of a customer service number that you hide?
Yeah, sure. And to be clear, like, this all sounds quite doomy, right? And I think I always talk in really pointed ways about ethics on the web. I think it is important I think talking about ethics in business is also important, but I'm also super keen to point out that there are many businesses who choose not to operate that way and who choose to have a real, I would say, real empathy for customers, real empathy for the people who use their products, buy their products. And because of that, create fanatic, loyal fan bases amongst those people. And I'm thinking about businesses like Lush. I'm thinking about businesses like Huel, right? That they create a self-marketing product by treating people well.
I think that's an excellent point, because I know it's not in the same area, but it is still something else that got to me. So I refuse to call this company by its official name, so I'll just use the abbreviations. CEX. I went to try to contact them just to find out if this one product was available in the store. They do not offer any phone number to contact in the store. They have no number to contact if you need anything about warranty. It's just an email, which they said that we'll get back to you in 48 hours, which if you're trying to do something for warranty, you need something quicker than a 40-hour response time. But they do say, oh, if you go on to Facebook Messenger or TikTok, then you can contact us. Well, I don't have a Facebook, but I did create Facebook to try to get hold of them. Go on there, and there's no way of contacting them on Facebook. So I feel like I was just going around in circles.
It is an insane proposition to make someone in their 40s set up a TikTok to talk to a company. That is an insane thing to ask us. What are you doing?
Well, this, yeah, I mean, this could just turn into a bitching session about different companies' practices. I had an interesting experience with LNER, although I had a fantastic experience with LNER 2 days ago, so I'll give them some kudos for that. Should we move on to the next slide, or could
Yeah, we'll continue talking about something else. So what?
Well, otherwise we'll just be talking about all the times we've been mildly slighted by various brands. Not that I hold a grudge.
What's really worth thinking about is these conversations happen. We're having them on a podcast, but they are happening in pubs, in bingo halls. They're happening in supermarkets. They're happening on Facebook, in Reddit. They're happening everywhere. And it is because people really, really do feel strongly about when they've been mistreated, and also about when they feel like something's gone above and beyond to treat them right. And so you will see people, for example, saying, I had a problem with, I don't know, this air fryer that I bought, and I called the company and they just shipped me a new one. They trusted me when I said that it didn't work anymore. I gave them a bit of info and they just shipped me a new one, and the courier took the old one away, and it was easy. And like that's an example of a great experience, right? I think, but also things like that create longer term advocacy, because I always use Costco as an example. One of the things that makes people fanatic about Costco is, there's two things actually, which is their own brand Kirkland stuff has an insanely high quality threshold. I have no idea what the initial thought process was behind that, but when you hear about a supermarket having an own brand, you generally associate that with not necessarily it's cheap and nasty, but the idea is that it's something that is less than a sort of well-known brand, but also has the price to match it, which is the opposite in Costco. You buy something that says Kirkland signature on it, and you're like, that's going to be really good, and I can have confidence in buying it. It's one thing. But then the other thing is they've de-risked every purchase in the store because they've got this insanely flexible refund policy where if something breaks, you can just take it back and they'll give you your money back and they don't even argue about it. And because of that, you don't have to, as a buyer, think, oh, I hope this TV is going to last. I hope it's not going to just conk out in 2 months' time when I get home. Because you're covered. You've got that security. And that comes from them understanding that the long-term effects of de-risking that is beneficial overall compared to not doing it.
I think Amazon has a similar thing because every time I've had to return something to Amazon, and they also use the AI, so you never really speak to an actual person, but the AI just says, yeah, fair enough, I'll refund.
My beef with Amazon customer service, I have a lot of beef with Amazon and their model, but my beef with their service model particularly is that I just don't know how it works. I never know what I'm going to get, right? If I've ever had to return something, I'll have like one return where it's like, I'll think, oh, that costs like 30, 40 quid for me to buy. They're going to want this back. And fine, it's something that's broken or I don't really want it or whatever. They want to return it. And they'll be like, oh yeah, you can just keep that and we'll refund you the money. And I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, that's weirdly okay, but okay, cool. And then I've also had a similar experience where like they've sent like a jar of pasta sauce that's broken on the way to the house, and I'm like, this is broken. They're like, yeah, cool. We'll send you a parcel to retrieve it. And I'm like, I don't understand how the process works.
Well, particularly with the jar of pasta sauce that's broken, like I'll just sort of scrape it into the pot.
Yeah, why do you want this back? It's broken glass and marinara sauce. Like, what? How could this possibly be useful to you? Like, I don't understand the model, and it changes. It feels like it changes every time I interact with Amazon, and also because of that, there cannot be any documentation on how it works on the system. So like, it's just, I don't know. It feels like a gamble every time you get somebody.
Vibe customer service.
Yeah. It's so strange. And like, either it's changing at such a rate that I can't keep up with it. I might return something once every 4 months, 5 months, right? It's not regular, but like, it feels different every time.
Oh, fair enough.
I mean, they could be just using some CRO to determine which one is the right one. So maybe now they know we don't ask for the broken pasta sauce back.
Exactly. That was a test. It was an A/B test. It was like, we could get the broken pasta back, and I don't know, just mush it around a bit, and we'll see how that works out. It was like, this is terrible. This broken glass of marinara sauce is awful. Let's never do that again.
And sell again. Nobody wanted it.
It was only one of size of one
with bits of broken glass in it. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it was being sold as used, acceptable.
Yeah.
I was wondering what the the sort of p value or the z value was for that, because I was saying the sample size of one. It's like they got the marinara sauce in the glass back, and they were like, it's statistically significant. Is this?
Yeah.
I'm leaving it.
The detectable effect is a box full of sauce.
We only need a sample size of one. This is fucking awful.
Yeah, the effect size is enormous. I hate this. Yeah.
I can't tell which is my blood and which is the marinara sauce.
I was just about to make that joke. All right. So, what are the biggest misconceptions brands still have about CRO that another web is possible is trying to challenge?
So this one isn't helped by some practitioners in my industry. I'm not going to call anyone out, but this is definitely one where CRO often gets treated as a couple of things which it doesn't necessarily have to be, and doesn't work particularly well when it is, right? So it can be treated as hacks, right? That can be a way of treating CRO. Like, we're gonna put a label here that says this, and it's gonna be, a way of sort of hacking in a way of communicating to a consumer something. or it can be used as like a marketing toolkit to try and sort of get around what I would say is weaknesses in a product, probably. So for example, you don't have, let's say you've got a product which isn't particularly like competitive compared to the other things that people who might buy it are comparing it against. You can think, oh, what we'll do is we'll use CRO to try and make it appear more than it is psychologically for a user. And can we figure out the right combination of techniques to sell more of this thing? That's another thing that I think it's really, really bad at, because again, the moment you sell the item and it arrives, the veil goes, right? People get to see exactly what it is and what it feels like, and it's not what they were sold. And so it feels very, very different. But it won the A/B test. That's the thing that's important to point out there, because if your A/B test was more add to bags or more checkouts, then that happened. You just pissed a bunch of people off later on. So that's one misconception. The other is that CRO is kind of UX tinkering rather than thinking about how users interact with products and journeys and digital experiences generally, and then changing those journeys. CRO actually is a term that comes from an agency that sold conversion UX testing tinkering, basically. That's the origin of that term. It's a term they came up with to describe what they do. But there's a great deal of clear water between that and what I do, and what a lot of the brilliant practitioners in our space do, which is more akin to something like product management with a really strong, robust, like, proof case behind it. If you look at the sort of Microsofts and Spotifys and thingy and businesses like that of the world, they are experimenting, but they're people who are experimenting aren't necessarily calling themselves CRO people. They're product aligned Scrum teams, and then they release every change as an experiment. But the practice I go through and the practice they go through is really similar. We identify what's not working, or what people want from a product that they're not getting, or how something could work a bit better or a bit smoother. We design an alternative once we've got a hypothesis around that. We test that hypothesis by releasing it to a controlled population versus another population's not getting it or getting a different version. And then we measure the difference. And we are doing functionally the same thing. It's just that in order for me to explain it to the marketplace in a way that a lot of people would understand, the commonly accepted term would be CRO, but it is a world of difference from that kind of changing the height of a button on a page, or hiding an FAQ section, right? Like that is tinkering. And it's sort of, when I explain it to businesses, I always talk about whether you're doing user-led change or whether you're doing tool and capability-led change. If you're doing capability-led change, you've bought an A/B testing tool, and you've gone, oh, the visual editor lets us change the color on that or put some new text there, and so that's your test, because you've got the capability to do it. And so you've gone, what can we do with this? We can do that. All right, cool, let's do it. User-led change starts with your user, and the tech is, much the same downstream, but you're starting with, like, users get to this part of the journey. They don't necessarily understand what we're asking them here, and here. We think they would respond differently if we gave it to them a different format. So we're testing that format.
On the development of the hypotheses,
Mhm.
what do you do you use to generate those?
Cool. So there's a number of methods that we would go through, but typically you have to understand what the user is trying to do, or what they are, what their mental model for like approaching the product or service or something like that is. Once you understand that, you can understand the gap between what they're trying to do or what they believe they're looking for and what actually exists. And then once you've got those two things, you have to figure out how to get from here to here. And that can be, and it's so hard to talk in general terms because it's so specific to whatever the experience is and what the product is, and also what the life cycle of that product is. Like, for example, buying a holiday is very, very different from buying some shoes, right? Like, it's a really, really different buying cycle, and you need to do different things with different people. Let me actually talk about the difference in those journeys, because that might help actually. So let's say you're trying to sell people a package holiday. When you dig into that journey, you're going to understand that those people are not acting in isolation, right? They're booking a family holiday, or they're booking a holiday with their partner, or whatever, right? And so they are probably not going to act there in the moment and buy immediately. So your focus in that journey, the thing you would, when you find that out, the thing you should probably assess is, how easy do I make it once I've shown them what we sell, for them to send that to a partner, show their partner the options, shortlist a number of options and come back to them. Do these features exist? If they do, how do we show them that this is something they can do to make that negotiation easier, right? And it's understanding all of that helps you figure out what you do and don't have, or where it is and isn't explained, and then you can figure out your hypothesis. And your hypothesis there might be, if we created an easy add to shortlist function that saves different holidays that we offer, we would convert those users more often downstream. Might be
Or even if, because I was buying a holiday recently, and exactly as you described, it's it's £2,000 just for the place where we would stay. So clearly I'm not just going to turn up and buy it immediately. I'm going to have to talk to my wife about it. I'm going to have to figure out what there is to do for kids. But in order to find the property, I had to say it was 2 adults and 2 kids. So you already know by that point that I'm going to be looking for things to do with kids. So some sort, like you've got all these major retailers who they don't maintain information on individual products. They use product aggregation tools, and then they hit the APIs for the product aggregation tools, and that pulls back. They use a standard SKU or whatever, and that pulls back the information about those products, so they don't have to maintain that information. It's a service that you buy. So what's wrong with Booking.com or whoever, or Airbnb or whatever, having a feed of information that talks about geographic areas and things that there are to do in those geographic areas? Because then I wouldn't even have to leave. I could have found out what there is to do whilst I was still, I wouldn't have had to go anywhere else to do my research. So really, really interesting, because I think that's a specific example, but what you're saying, and it's something that we do, is you find that you get better ideas about things to do with analytics. In our case, I think, things to do with data collection and so on, or what kind of data you should collect, and so on and so forth, if you bother to get to know the client.
Yeah, 100%. You have to know your customers really intimately. I think that's essential to it, right? Because if you're, and I've been preaching this for years, right? Before it sort of crystallized into another web as possible, I've been preaching, like, it all starts with empathy for your customer, because only by having that and deeply understanding it can you begin to build journeys that people want to be in. I I do have criticisms of Booking.com and of Airbnb and things like that, but something they do know at least is what their customers are, some of their customers' struggles, right? So let's talk about Booking.com. One of the things that Booking enforced with a lot of their supply side businesses, so like hotels and individual properties, is there has to be a really lengthy free refund period. So it's quite rare for you to go on Booking.com and have to pay everything right now, right? And they've got the data to back that up that says if you commit, there's really decent chance you're going to go through with it, and the amount of people who don't go through with it is small compared to the amount of people who wouldn't even engage with it if they had to put all the money on the line right away. And they've done that math, figured that out, and then enforced it at platform level so that it is something that you now can just know Booking for. Airbnb lets you have the concept of multiple occupants in a property that you book, where you can split the cost and you can send other people itinerary information, just basically add them. There's some of the like Uber Eats and things like that where like if you're doing a group order, you can get everyone to just feed into a central place, so you don't have to get everyone's like individual like KFC order. You can just get them, just go, here's a link, go put in what you want, and then at the end one person just goes, okay, here's the money and here's what we're going to do, right? It's that, but for properties basically. And features like that are unlikely to come about entirely organically. They come about from a real understanding of how people use the product in the wild.
No, absolutely. I think, and that's just really good insight. I think what I was getting at is what I really get from hearing you talk about it, and it's something that we try to do, is that running an agency that helps businesses with things like this, getting to know your client, my client, the businesses we're working with makes such a huge difference to that, and investing the time as an account manager, for example, in actually learning about what the business you're working with really does and how they do it, massively impacts the way in which you're able to help them. So the fact that you're able to describe those things and think about them in that way is a differentiator, I guess.
Also just makes you a much more valuable partner for that business, right? Because one thing I'm never going to do is sell people a playbook, right? Because I think that, one, it's cheap, two, it doesn't work. And the value that you get from working with someone like me or you is over and above just the outcomes that are sort of laid out in the pitch or whatever way that that's sold in, right? A really good example of this is I have in the past and still have clients who will just run things by you because you're the person who knows a bit about this stuff and can give them some insight on how stuff works, right? And a good example of that is like trying to do it without violating any NDAs. So you can tell a client who may not necessarily know this themselves at the time you're telling them, you could do this, and you already have the capability and the tech in your business to do it. And here's how it would work. And here's how you can set these things up. And like that can spin into this entirely new area of the business they've never even considered before. Really, really good example of that. If you've got an A/B testing tool, you've probably also got a personalization function. You just don't realize it.
Yeah. Well, just while you're on that for a second, that leads very nicely to you emphasize helping teams build internal capabilities so they're not dependent on agencies forever. Why is this such an important part of Another Web is Possible's mission?
So it's really good. I think some of the incentives in the agency world are a bit perverse, and they lead to sort of bad outcomes for everybody. What I mean by that is, if your account has to grow every single year, that agency is going to do one of two or three things. They are going to put your fees up. One, if the performance has been going up, you probably don't mind. If the performance has been incredible and continues to stay incredible forever, you'll probably don't mind if the fees go up every year because the performance matches it. If the performance is flat, that agency will still want to put your fees up. If you don't agree, or if you want to bring your fees down, in response, that agency will do one of two things. They will put less experienced staff who are cheaper on your account and take more experienced, more expensive staff off that account. You will get a worse service because of that, and they will lose some of that knowledge. Or the experienced staff will stay, but they will spend less time on you. And so you will have the experience as a client of paying more and getting less. And the longer that relationship goes on, the longer that dynamic continues, and it's really unhealthy. And it leads to really fractured relationships. And it leads to really bad outcomes. And I wanted to, I do believe the best way to do this is in-house. I do. I genuinely do believe that. But a lot of people bring in agencies also have ambitions to do that eventually, but they're not there right now, and they don't believe they can spin it up in 12 months, right? So they bring in talent to help them in the short term, but their intention is not to pay for that forever. They want to build capability. They want to build internal things that they can be proud of and that they can own, and that run seamlessly as a part of their business, and that will eventually probably be cheaper than contracting out to an agency, either because you'll have more resource that you can dedicate to it at a lower cost per hour, or because you've been able to build such sort of capability that you can run it leaner, right? I think not admitting that or not having a plan for that is really short-sighted. And so I deliberately put my flag in the ground to say, I know this is something you probably want, and I want to help you get there. And I think it's a real commitment to making sure that internal capability is actually getting built. Because actually, if you're an agency trying to keep that client forever, and you see them start to build internal capability, that's a red flag. You actually, as the agency, have the incentive to keep your tools to yourself, keep your methods to yourself, make sure they're not trained or experienced or confident enough to do it themselves, keep them on the hook, keep them coming back again and again and again. And it's crap. It's a really bad way to treat people. And I think you get better outcomes for everyone when you don't do that. And also, when you treat people like this, it does two things for your business really well. Well, it does for my business really, really well, which is, one, they personally recommend me to other people who have the similar problem that they had. It's always good. And two, if they move to another business and they have a similar problem again, they know exactly who they want to solve it, because the last experience was great. And we never ended on that sour note where they're like, nah, never again.
No, that really resonates with me, and we've had that experience a lot, where people move around and then we're getting brought in because those people want to work with us again. I think with us, it's slightly different. We do want those sorts of retainer models, those ongoing relationships. But I think what I tend to find with those is you make them more efficient, the retainer models. You deliver, and then the retainer model starts delivering more. And so you move from a place of, we brought you in to deliver tickets. That's what it kind of starts out at, is like, we just need somebody to do this and to deliver these tickets. And then in year 2 of the retainer, it's like, actually, the ticket delivery system is a lot more efficient than it used to be. So we're getting through that. Now we want to talk about strategic opportunities. And so if you kind of don't know whether it's necessarily building an internal capability with us, because it's a different place. It's a different thing. And a lot of businesses just like, look, we're really happy with what you're doing in the retainer, so just keep doing it. We're happy with the amount of delivery, because we tried in-housing this before and we didn't get the same outcomes, so we're just gonna stick with you guys. But where I think the value is in that, that transformation into a strategic partner rather than a delivery partner. And so it's making the retainer more efficient and just saying that this just runs itself now. This, this thing of this ticketing system, you don't even need oversight. We'll just run the whole thing end to end for you, and it runs itself now. So now let's start using some of that retainer to start delivering some of the strategic stuff. And then you get into a place where it's like, okay, now we're going to sign a retainer, but the retainer has a deliverable. So it's not just time anymore. Now the retainer is going to have an outcome. So by this time next year, when we're coming to sign again, we're going to have delivered this value. And then you start to look at, actually, let's assign value to individual tickets. And so we can tell you how much, and so it just expands and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I agree with what you're saying, and a lot of it resonates with me in terms of like building clients and then wanting to work with us, but it's a slightly different model.
Yeah. Well, I do work on retainer. But the difference between me is I'm under no illusion that retainer should last forever. And to be real, it will last as long as it lasts. Like I'm very much of the opinion that, like, when agencies aim to not do this, they're kidding themselves, because the client still does have all the power to end the relationship.
Well,
And
absolutely.
they will just get to a point where they're like, no, we're moving on, we're done. And not accepting that doesn't make that any less of a reality. And so, like, the difference really is that, one, I'm completely acknowledging it, and two, I want people to see that I've set up in such a transparent way that actually I'm not working against the goals that we have mutually, because I have an ulterior motive to get you to spend more or keep you going forever. Because I think that is really, really important. If I need you to trust me, and the way that I'm going to try and get you to trust me is I'm going to really clearly lay out the different aspects of our relationship together. One of which is material. You're going to pay me to bring this amount of value into your business. And I don't, it's not you pay me that much now, but I think I can get more out of you later. It's not that. And I'm perfectly happy to be in a situation where a client brings my services in until they don't need me anymore, and then we sign a line off and we go, that's great, we did it, we did great work together, it's really good.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I'm also
definitely don't want to overstate.
I'm so confident in that I don't lock people into like really, really long contracts. They're like, don't need to do that. I think that the value is evident, and also it has to work for both of us.
100% agree with that. You don't want to overstay your welcome. You want it to be there as long as it's being valuable for both you as a company and for them as a company.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think it completely de-risks it to a large part de-risks the reticence about bringing on support. Obviously, it means that I might have a lot of work, too much work for a few months, and then less the following months. But actually, keep that pipeline going. That's fine. But like the more important thing for me is that we have a reputation to uphold, and I think that's really, really important.
No, definitely. I think particularly with like sort of small to medium boutique agencies, the reputation is the thing that gets you repeat work, and it's that thing of having that reputation with somebody who then moves around and wants to bring you in because they've enjoyed working with you and they've seen value delivered.
And that's the other thing as well. I'm perfectly happy to deliberately stay small, right? I am under no illusions to hyperscale the agency, because I think to do that, you either have to make massive trade-offs and then lose your identity, or you over-leverage yourself and put yourself at enormous risk, neither of which I have any intention of doing. But I think that what you do get when you buy from a smaller boutique agency like me is you should be really clear what you're actually buying, and you should be able to really trust in it and have that as a sort of trusted partner. I don't really want to be an agency that does you work with the agency generally, but your account manager changes every 2 months, and your quality of service and delivery changes every few months, and whenever you need to raise something, you raise it to someone who's not really on the project, and it's crap, it's awful, it's a really bad experience, and I don't think anyone should have it. I think there's real value in being able to work with someone who is highly skilled in the profession that they're doing, and to have a really good share of their time and attention to really get into a problem and solve it. I think that's really valuable.
100%. Well, make sure that we are moving on. And it's actually the last question before we move into the lightning round. This is one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you to see if you wanted to jump on the podcast, because you recently built the Experiment OS, one system for research, hypothesis, experiments, analysis, and decisions. What problem were you trying to solve when you decided to create it?
So this is a tool that the best way to think about this is a program management tool for experimenters, right? It's basically what it does. Nothing like this really exists, and the stuff that does exist that's a bit like it is either super expensive for what it actually does, or is a string of interconnected tools that takes ages to set up and doesn't work particularly well when it does. So at my previous agency, we would have had a system for managing the entire experimentation program, and to be clear, it's doing a number of jobs, right? So it is a full program ownership and management tool, but it's not just a ticketing tool, right? Like it's you could use Jira to do the day-to-day ingest and outgest of work, but what this is doing for you in a way that that Jira doesn't do particularly well is it's allowing you to build up and store institutional knowledge of things you've done and what the outcomes were and why it was important and what the value was and blah 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 blah. Whereas Jira is much more about the day-to-day of getting work done. In fact, that's why they bought Confluence, right? Because they were trying to put a layer on top of Jira in order to try and bridge that gap. This is built specifically for the process of experimenting. So if you go into an A/B testing tool, you'll find that this probably doesn't exist in most of those. Some of them have something a bit like it, but it's not very good. Whereas this is a independent, tool agnostic, completely robust system that enforces process. That's a really important part for me, because actually what a good experimentation process is is doing is it is aping the scientific method in order to prove or disprove a hypothesis, right? And if you're doing, I don't know, medicine, for example, and you step outside the process that gives you all of your controls and makes your experiment reliable, then you wasted your time, right? Because you'll get ripped to shreds in peer review because they'll go, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, we don't know that data's wrong, that's not right. And like, we get away with it in business and we shouldn't, right? Because it'll mean that if you want to, pass off some incorrect results as correct, you probably could get away with it with a little bit of theatre. But this is enforcing a consistent process that is guided as well. That's also really important. So if you've got more junior members on your team who are responsible for experimentation, they've got in-journey guided advice at every stage, whether it's research and how to log research and what that research should be and how to structure what it tells you, whether it's how to build hypotheses on the back of that research, and like hypothesis writing, like if this then that because of this, right? That sort of method of documenting a hypothesis. Prioritization scoring built into the tool so that when you've generated a hypothesis, it guides you through the process of scoring against how hard it would be to actually do as a or prove or disprove. Like, is it a pretty complex tool build kind of thing? How much evidence is there to support it in the research that you've done? So, for example, you did 10 interviews. Did it come out in all 10, or was it one thing one person mentioned? That kind of stuff. And then asking people to put a rough stab on impact. So we put this on the main part of the website. Everyone's going to see it. It could have a huge impact, right? So you ask people to score that. Once they've scored it, you then have the items in the top as your highest priority, biggest, do these. Basically, this is what you should do next. This is a constantly evolving backlog because every time a new hypothesis goes in, it gets scored. It floats above things that were scored lower before. You have a constantly refreshed backlog. Then you go and build the experiment. In the process of setting up the experiment, you are doing all the good hygiene steps of an experiment. You're doing sample size calculations. And it's all in journey. It's all guided as well. You are setting your primary metric. You are setting guardrail metrics. You are doing every part of that. Then it progresses to a build stage. There's tools in there to help you either work with a designer or to generate mock-ups and designs to have better conversations around what you're trying to build. You can then go and build that in an A/B testing tool. If you're building in Convert, we've already set it up so these two tools talk to each other really, really well. If you then go and put that experiment live, and if you're in Convert, this is the amazing, and we will be adding other platforms over time, but Convert were really, really on board with getting into the tool. We're really gracious, and so they really lended us they basically said, here's a developer account, here's how all our APIs work, go nuts. And so that was really helpful. So we built that so it integrates really nicely. You can basically set it up so you go, right, I'm going to click run in Convert, and it is now going to measure for me at intervals of 7 days or 14 days. And it is then going to put that through our stats engine, which is a Bayesian stats engine, which is going to be able to tell you when a test is statistically significant, or at least how close you are, and also the level of risk associated with being wrong and all of that sort of stuff, which is good. Give you the confidence you need to make decisions on whether the hypothesis was true or not, and whether you should do something with that information. And then we've got another step after that, which it's really hard for me to explain this step, but it to me feels like a game changer, which is decisioning is now a discrete step in the journey. So in a lot of CRO programs, the test is the decisioning, and I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong for a couple of reasons. because what that does, it puts you in a pattern where only winning tests are things you do anything with. Wrong. You're going to learn something from whatever you get. And two, you end up in a cycle of chasing tests that win, only tests that win, and only ever doing that. And so that influences from the end of the outcome of the program, it influences everything you do over there. That's completely the wrong way to do it, because the whole reason you started with the customer was that you need to figure out what problems to solve and then try to solve them in creative ways. The decisioning step's really important as well, because it allows people who are responsible for a program, either your product manager, or sometimes you've got a website manager, or maybe you've even got a marketing manager looking after the website, right? Like, it allows them to be fully involved and fully informed, and still steer the program without being responsible for reading the results of A/B tests and setting them up. They're just informed by the outcomes of them, and then can make discrete decisions on the back of data, which is then logged. That's also really, really important, because at the point you log it, you then know what you know a number of things. You know, one, what was the revenue that you were able to model on something that you then put live? So you now have a program revenue metric, which you didn't have before. Really, really valuable. It's now just a step in the journey. Two, if something didn't work, what do you do with it? Is it this would have lost us money, thank God we didn't do it? In that case, we call that revenue protection. Like, you would have done that before, because you obviously we thought that was a good idea. If we hadn't experimented, we wouldn't have protected that revenue. We also have the iteration concept at that point, right? So let's say we think customers are struggling to find this particular group of products. The hypothesis is, if we just put it in the nav, they would find it more, and then they would buy them more. And you did that, and you were wrong, because you put it in the nav and people just didn't click it, didn't go in there. Well, the issue that you found about people not finding stuff is probably still true. It's just the solution wasn't right. And so in that situation, you should iterate, right? You should be like, okay, so putting it in the nav isn't the right approach. It's not the right place. Maybe we do like specific in-journey things. Maybe we change our like homepage section here to talk about that. Maybe we have a landing page specifically for it that then points traffic to it, right? But there's lots of ways to solve that problem, and you've decided at that point to iterate and do something else to try and learn and evolve it. Now, we built in something called the iteration chain to that, which allows you to attribute value back to the failure, because that was your stepping stone to figuring it out, because like 2-3 links of the chain down, you do something that works. That's with the same hypothesis, and it's only the stepping stones that got you to that gave that value, and that's really, really important, because that changes the narrative around failed tests or inconclusive tests.
Well, it's the it's the multi-touch channel marketing approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I know where you're it from.
You've got, well, it's more that it's not just attribution modeling and mix and stuff like that, because that's, that I think actually in marketing that is still a bum fight, right? A lot of the time, you've got people who are die hard about last touch and people who are die hard about other models, and that's slightly crazy. The main thing that I really want people to take away is, if your program has an experiment result that you don't do anything with, that is when that's a failed experiment, right? If you do anything with what you learned, whether it's a new, slightly different version of that, whether it is something that eventually becomes a lot better, whether it is, oh, well, that had the opposite effect we expected. What if we double down on that opposite effect? And yeah, an example like that, right? You create value out of your experiment program by doing that. because it treats experimentation as what it should be, which is a process of like learning and negotiating towards the best experience possible with your customer.
Yeah.
And this system does that. That's why it exists. Nothing like that exists to date, because it's either such a manually managed process that it's not repeatable, I don't think, or just the infrastructure doesn't exist to do it. So I thought, do I want to try and recreate this from a bunch of third-party tools, which would probably be like Airtable and a stats engine of some type. There's a few out there, and maybe a few other plugins and comms tools, and basically pay. Airtable's ridiculously priced for what it actually is, and only gets more expensive year on year, and therefore charge whatever client I work with that in fees just to pay for a tool that is being used at like 10% of its capability. Or do I build something which proves a few things? First of all, proves hopefully that I know what I'm talking about, and two, that you can have a really, really structured process. I started building it for me initially and was like, oh, this will just be a thing that I own, and like the running costs will be kept so low that I can basically afford to just give it away when I work with a client. And then the more I'm building it, the more I'm thinking, this is a tool that I actually wish it existed previously, so I could have used it when we had all of those programs and opportunities to do so. So yeah, it's got a bunch of things in there. Scratch the surface with the features, because there's a bunch of things even in that screenshot that I think are really, really cool. But yeah, it's a tool that is built for running experimentation at just about every level. I think everyone can get something from it.
Yeah, I remember watching the demo that you put up on LinkedIn, and I was quite impressed and ready to see it.
Demo.
Yep.
Yeah, that was cool. I promised their chief marketing officer that I would make that. But yeah, it was good. It was really, really good. They've been so supportive, and I think that is why they were the first to get in there and to have the position that they have. I'm sure we'll add more over time. It comes from two things. Firstly, they need to have the capability to query the API, and for the data that I need to pull from the API. And two, they need to be sort of approachable and accessible enough to both, make it easy for me to build that into their tool. And so if they fit that model, then yeah, they're definitely a candidate to exist there.
Great. Now, that was actually the last question before we move into the lightning round. This is something new that I've been wanting to do for 2026. As I told Matt doesn't even know what the questions are coming. So it's something that's completely on me. And of course, you need a good picture of a lightning if we're going to have a lightning round.
This will be good as short shareable content on.
That's my hope.
Yeah.
Each one a LinkedIn post.
Yeah. Yep.
So, what's one CRO myth or optimization myth you wish would vanish forever?
That you can experiment without really knowing your customer. That if you just build the environment, you can put them through it like lab rats in a maze, and that will be all the evidence that you ever possibly need.
And Matt, always feel free to jump in if you want. What's your favorite digital experience of all time?
That's a really difficult one. That's a really tough one to answer because it changes over time as well.
Well, just one that comes to your mind first.
Okay, I recently joined. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. Quobuzz. It's a music streaming platform. And my explicit use case for joining Quobuzz was get off of Spotify. Spotify are investing in military tech, so every time I pay them, a little bit of that goes on a bomb, and I don't really like that. So I've got to get off Spotify, but what do I replace it with? That felt more aligned to me, gave me a bunch of control and choice and the things that I actually liked about Spotify. And Quobuzz fit that quite nicely. Great big catalog and all that sort of stuff. But from it, I got this real old school, almost nostalgia vibe, because they're kind of like a non-algorithm platform. They're kind of like an old school discovery kind of setup where like they've got music writers who will recommend stuff, and the process of actually clicking through from the recommendation and listening to the music's really easy. And then also you can just filter by like new releases by genre, which seems so simple, but it's something that almost impossible to do in Spotify. And it felt entirely untouched by like some forces that I think have made platforms a little bit worse, which is content recommendation that I can't impact or change. Right? So an algorithm deciding what I should listen to rather than me telling a system what I want to listen to. That isn't there, and I really enjoyed that. And then like it just kind of brought back old like memories of like going into record stores and going through, but the digital version of that, which was really nice, engaging with like an album and also a bit of a story behind the album and why it's good, and this is from that, and it just made the process of rediscovering music much more enjoyable. And I feel like I went from being a passive listener to an engaged active listener of music, because I wasn't just sticking on a daily mix and being like, oh, here's a song I recognize. I had to do a bit of work, and that was really good. I really enjoyed it. I really fell in love with that experience.
Mine's also music related. So after bath time, not my bath time, the kids, we sometimes do like jumping around on the bed. Again, the kids, not me. The bed would break. But I think my favorite digital experience, and again, it's just because it's a recent one, is my little boy's been getting into rock, and more accurately heavy metal, but it's really, really specific. So we've got to try to find like he really likes Rage Against the Machine, and I have to say he's been listening to Killing in the Name of, and including all of the bad words at the end, which is probably not the best parenting that there's ever been. But then he wants to listen to My Horrible Old Band as well. So I'm jumping from Spotify to My Old Band isn't on Spotify because we were before that existed. So then we're jumping over to like Bandcamp, and then I was trying to get him into some early hip hop to sort of just mix it up a little bit. But he didn't like, it was Roots Maneuver, Witness the Fitness, the Witness One Hope, that one. And he didn't like it when I put it on Spotify, so I switched over to YouTube and let him watch the video because the video's hilarious. And so we were just flipping between music platforms whilst connected to my Bluetooth speakers, which was sat on a desk somewhere, and everyone was going nuts, jumping all over the bed and going crazy. And I thought that was quite nice because it was just, there was no one platform. We jumped between like 3 different platforms to deliver a dancing experience.
That's nice. It's really nice. There's I've got a bit of a wild card as well, which is something that just amused me a lot. I found really delightful, but it's not really for anything other than amusing and delighting people. Which is, are you familiar with the creator Jim will Paint It?
Yes, I have a T-shirt with. In fact, when I saw Andrew on Wednesday, I was wearing a T-shirt with his picture of Fred Dibner knocking down Barad-dûr on it,
Good.
which
Yeah.
combines two of my favorite things, which is Lord of the Rings and Fred Dibner.
So he did a project called the Andrew Lloyd website, which is like
What about that? Yeah.
GeoCities sites from the sort of like late 90s, early noughts have a very particular aesthetic that might generously be called Web 1, which I find really nostalgic, really nostalgic. And it's a delightful experience to sort of see that aesthetic created. You know, like Windows 3.1 aesthetic, where you sort of see like, wow, I remember that. It's got a bit of a touches a very similar sort of vibe. Well, this is like an entirely fictional website that allegedly was owned and built by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and it's ridiculous, and it's very funny, and like it's both a delight to navigate the experience. You can go and find it. You can search for the Andrew Lloyd website, and it's a real website that's online, and you can click around and just sort of immerse yourself in the sort of character of a weird little guy that they've created, and it's just fun. It's just a very fun experience to be in. And yeah, me and some friends were just sending that around and
There's
sort of enjoying it.
no, I've seen that, and that there's a couple of others that are a similar kind of vibe. There's the original Space Jam website, which still exists, which is from the movie Space Jam. But there's one, I don't know if you'll have heard of it, but it's a guy who makes really chunky coins,
Okay.
and he's an American guy, and he basically, his backstory is, and nobody knows if he's real or if it's satire, but we're kind of on the fence. Probably satire. But somebody attacked him, and so he tried to get rid of them by attacking them with coins. But the coins were really weak and feeble, and so he realized that if ever he was going to be attacked again, he would need chunkier coins. So
Yeah, I like it.
so he makes these massive giant nickels and dimes and things like that, and then people buy them. And it's a very GeoCities kind of thing.
I love that. And then the other shout out I want to give is for one of the charities that Experiment OS gives you as an option that you can donate to. That's the other thing. If you pay for it, we donate 10% of whatever you pay to a charity every month. And you get to pick the charity, and there's a number of them in there. One of them is the ICIJ, the Independent Consortium of Independent Journalists, I think, or the International Consortium of Independent Journalists. And they, whenever they release, like, they're doing incredible journalism, usually on stuff that like is pretty shocking stuff, right? Like usually they've done a lot of financial crimes, like the Panama Papers was theirs and things like that. They're almost always accompanied with this most beautiful and well constructed website experience, which really immerses you in the journalism. And I really encourage people to go and look at some of the reporting on the ICIJ website, because it's such an enjoyable way of exploring the subject that isn't just dry on a page reading a news article. You're getting the information in a similar way, but like the Panama Papers one was really, really good because it had an interactive map of basically how money was moving across the world and all of that sort of stuff, which was really, really, really powerful for the point they were trying to make with it. Love that. I think that's really, really good. Always very impressed by anything they put out.
Thank you so much for that. Next one. A dark pattern that irritates you the most.
Difficult, this one, because they're all annoying. And there's some that really annoy me but aren't explicitly dark patterns. Like confirm shaming really pisses me off. It's not a dark pattern, really. It's just a really nasty thing to do. But have you ever seen like sign up for offers and then the cancel button says, no, I don't want any offers. And you're like, don't be a dick, right? Like, just go away. Just leave me alone. That's one thing that really annoys me. Right? It's not a dark pattern, 'cause it's not misleading. But a dark pattern, I guess, pre-ticked consent boxes is a real dirty one that I don't particularly like. It's also frowned upon by a lot of regulatory bodies now. So I think even the people who were doing it are sort of limited in their options of getting away with it. But in every time I see it, or the uncheck this box to not hear from us, what an incredibly silly way of treating people.
Right. One tool, not including those you created, that you absolutely couldn't live without.
Good question, this one. I mean, there's obvious ones like email, but more than that, I'm going to be super basic and say I've got a software program called Notepad++, and I really like it. I just really, really like it. It is just a very good way to, if you ever need to write anything, doesn't necessarily matter what language it's in, it's got a schema for it, doesn't necessarily matter how you need to get it down. It's basically like someone saw how people were using Notepad to write like JavaScript and Python and all that sort of stuff like that, and just put that on steroids, made it really effective.
I mean, mine's really basic as well. I mean, Apple reminders, just being able to set a reminder of what to do and being notified at the time. And I love seeing just how they've made it where it's even more like in your face. You gotta do it. You told us to remind you right now. Stop and just do it. So
I think for me, it's sorry, it's just the reason I've gone off camera is because I'm sort of wandering around my house to get another beer. But one that I'm really using all the time at the moment is GitHub Copilot, and connecting that into VS Code to sort of augment my automation capability. And I do genuinely feel like at the moment, sort of, I don't know, I could live without it, but I really wouldn't want to. It just makes everything so much easier.
I feel that way about writing like SQL queries now, where I'm like, there's a lot of times where like, I don't know. I'm on the one hand, I'm kind of worried that I'm losing that skill, but on the other hand, it is a lot faster. And I would say the outcome is what I want more than 99% of the time.
Well, this is the thing, and I think it's kind of vibe coding, but it's different insofar as I do know how to do this. It's 10 times faster if I do it this way, and then I can validate that what it's given me is correct. I take your point around, am I going to forget how to do it? But I'm hoping not, because I still validate that what it's doing is right. So I'm still reading through code and understanding code.
Yeah, I feel the same way about SQL. I like.
well,
It's-
something I was gonna say, I recently just took Copilot, uploaded my JSON schema in there, and then said, okay, now that you've seen my JSON schema, teach me 2 things that I could be doing that I'm currently not doing. So that way it's teaching me something that I wouldn't even know what to even begin to search for.
That is a really, really good point, and I had this exact conversation with my wife recently. Is there's a lot of negativity around AI, rightly so. Particularly in, its use in the creative industries, and also its, the energy efficiency and all the rest of it, and impact on the environment. But one thing I am finding is like taking something that so I know JavaScript really well. So I take that and I can then use that, but I don't, or I didn't anyway, really know automation that well, through Node.js. let's say a year ago. So I went with Node.js because I know JavaScript, so I knew I would be able to debug what it was creating. That thing of take this thing that I have done, look at it and tell me something else that I don't know about it. Or I mean, I'm somebody who learns through being hands-on, so more accurately, build me something else that I wouldn't know how to do, and then let me look at it. It's like, now I know how to do it. So it's like having a little teacher, and you sort of, there's a two-way relationship, because you correct the teacher. It gets things wrong. So the number of times I'd ask it and say, like, why have you put this outside of this function? It's like, oh yeah, I cocked that up, sorry. So you're still correcting it. There's still a feedback loop. You can't just let it do what it wants, because it'll get things wrong. But just as an example, one thing that it did was teach me about security and automation scripts. So I build these modules now, and I've learned more about git include, git ignore, things that would get uploaded or get excluded when I upload to Git, for hiding my credentials in a in a specific document that doesn't get uploaded, stuff like that, where it's been invaluable into just this feedback loop of working with it and learning more things. So yeah, completely agree with that as well, Andrew.
All right. So moving on. Most underrated part of a good experimentation.
It transforms your whole business. If you do it really well, it transforms your whole business, because suddenly everyone has another option other than just a gut feeling. And that is so powerful. So powerful. There even like really, even places where you think like that you shouldn't, that experimentation would be hard, maybe like regulatory environments, banks, finance, that kind of stuff, medical, right? Where you think like, oh, that must be a nightmare to experiment in. Oh my God, it couldn't be further from the truth how valuable it can be to them, because it allows them to do stuff that they don't have to just put a big gamble on. Like, it gives them a risk control environment where they can try. And a lot of the times when I do work with businesses in those sectors, they are actually trying to do the right thing by their customer a lot of the time, right? Like the financial products they're like, one, we don't really want to sell them to people who shouldn't have them, because like they're not going to work out for us long term anyway, because they'll default and we won't be able to get the money back, whatever that may be. Or they're saying, well, if someone doesn't really understand what they're buying, then they're going to refund it pretty much straight away, and that's going to cost us money, and we won't make any money from it, right? So they want to do the right thing by their customer, but that's also like the right thing for the regulator as well. So they're delighted when, for example, they can show the regulator, oh, we're trying to reduce the number of complaints we get due to misunderstanding by doing this, and this. And you can see, here's evidence actually that we've reduced complaints, and our customers like us more because we treat them better. And the regulator's like, that's amazing. Keep doing that. We want you to do that, because what a regulator is there to do is to stop people getting screwed over and having no recourse. And so businesses that engage in good faith with it gives them a really powerful tool to prove things, and in a controlled and safe way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that thing around working within regulation and working with regulation as a revenue generator, or accepting it as a revenue generator rather than as a net cost to the business, is really important. It's a really important mindset to get into, because there are opportunities to do things better from a regulatory point of view, like experimentation, that are more compliant than not doing. And getting into that mindset and understanding that you can work within these regulations and actually doing so and engaging with them rather than trying to circumvent them is an opportunity to generate revenue. I think is a very important mindset to get into.
Yeah, and I come from a regulation background, and I'm very supportive of regulation a lot of the time, because actually the whole reason it ends up existing is because there were too many cases of exploitation that drove
Exactly.
with no recourse, right? For the people who were being misled, mistreated, whatever. When you look at like financial regulations and things like that, quite often the big cases around that are pure malpractice that's caused them to exist. So it'd be things like, oh, this product was never right for this person, or and you sold them it on the basis it was, and at the time with the right checks and balances, you would have known that was wrong. And so, but it's very much the case that if you are behaving ethically, you should be most of the time completely aligned with your regulator.
Yeah, definitely.
Couldn't agree more. So, one industry trend you think is massively overhyped?
I am going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons because we were glazing AI earlier. I'm going to say AI is overhyped at the moment. I think it is, and it's not a binary thing of John's anti-AI, John's pro-AI, whatever, right? It is so many times a solution in search of a problem where, like, what are we going to, I'm hearing so much about AI. What are we doing with AI? We're like, well, we're using it in bits and pieces where it makes sense. Okay, well, we've got to have an AI product. And you're like, that's not solving a problem. The problem is the CEO wants to be able to talk about an AI product. That's the problem you're trying to solve there. And because of that, I think it's become an incredibly overhyped product or tool, right? To the point where, like, you've got businesses just basically adding an LLM chatbot to their website and being like, yeah, we're AI enabled now. And you're like, what problem are you solving here? Is this useful to people, right? And also, like, for a lot of people, that's off-putting. And, like, you really do want to be exploring whether it's really adding value or not before you go throwing that stuff around. And also, like, it always strikes me as like AI can be a really effective tool to use, but it's so weird to me when it becomes the focal point, and it is just because it's a hype moment that we're in at the moment that this is the focal point. But, like, if you saw a business say, oh yeah, we're Figma enabled, you'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? Right? Like, but Figma was a design tool that helped designers get to delivery much quicker and stuff like that, right? It'd be really strange to talk about it in those terms. And I think there will probably come a time where that feels alien to us as well, where people are talking about AI as if it's the product rather than a tool that exists within a toolkit.
No, I agree with you on that. And I think, to your point, what I tend to see, and it fits within that narrative, is people trying to use it for things that it isn't good at, or thinking because you haven't really delved into the nuances of how it's going to work, thinking it's going to do things that it definitely isn't going to do. And one that kind of hits me quite a lot is where AI is pitched for something that should be done by an automation. So, like, something that is just a repeatable task. You pull the same data in the same structure at the same time every day or every week, and you process that and you spit out a result. Like, AI doesn't need to do that, and shouldn't do that, because you're more likely to get something incorrect out of the back of it if you plug a large language model into it. All you need is one the automation.
People are like pasting huge amounts of text into a document and being like, can you remove all the quotations marks from this? Like, pasting that into a large language model. I'm like, you are going to lose your mind when you hear about find and replace, because, oh boy, is that for all the words.
But yeah, exactly that. I mean, my examples was probably more esoteric, but it's basically the same thing. It's just there are things that already exist, and so you'll see people talking about building processes. We've been building an AI agent recently, and actually a very, very significant chunk of that process is just automation. It's just get data, process data, put it here. Then the AI looks at it, and the only reason that the AI exists is for variance of analysis, essentially. The data is always the same format, and it's always taken down and processed and run in the same format on a regular cadence, and it's dropped into a place. And the reason that you have the AI is because you want it to do some sort of assessment of what's important this time, which you can't do through an automation. All you can do through an automation is a report. If you want a vague amount of analysis, then you have to have either a person or something that can assess the data and try and look at what's important. And then the instructions that you give it have to be super clear. So there's a whole process of back and forth of looking at the results and going, hang on a minute, that's nonsense, and reiterating. But yeah, so I think the thing for me, I would agree in terms of it's brilliant. I couldn't, like I mentioned, it as my thing that I couldn't live without, with the VS Code and the help that it's given me with learning new things and with speeding up processes. But equally, yeah, the number of times you hear about people wanting to use it for things that it just isn't going to do.
I always think when thinking about it in like a model kind of ways, the difference between human and AI outputs a lot of the time is, I always think about inherent context and explicit context. So explicit context is easy, right? Which is, you can say, I need a report, I need it to be 40 pages or 4 pages. I need it to be under 500 words. I need it to have graphs in it. I need the graphs to be this format. I need it to use these colors, right? That's all explicit context. You're telling it exactly what you want as an outcome. And there is then implicit or inherent context, which is unspoken, but would probably be understood by a human to exist, and are definitely not understood by a large language model to exist. And that will be things like, if you work at a financial business, you are likely to know what the sort of reporting style of that business is, because you've seen other reports. You know how other people, your peers, talk, for example. You may know that there are things that are worth highlighting because they're more important to people at the business than others, right? It's all implicit. And if you don't tell a model that, it just won't get it. It can't figure it out from thin air. And so part of effective tool use is you have to kind of map and understand your implicit context and make it explicit to a model. Because if you don't, it will never figure it out on its own.
In the instructions, and then test it and test the outcomes, and then iterate on the instructions that you give it until you are extremely clear. And I think, use it for the things that a human cannot do. It's a large language model, large. So if you have 1 million rows of data from, you're pulling down accessibility information because you want to run a governance process. So you're pulling down accessibility information off 500 websites, and it comes to 1 million rows of data or more. Yeah, a person's not going to be able to look at that and make sense of it in a meaningful way to pull out, not realistically, to pull out insight. So format it
or an AI as well.
What's that, sorry?
You'd have to batch it for an AI anyway. The context window is not large enough. So you'd have to batch the data in such a way that it could process it. But yeah, it will be incredibly tedious for a human, or in more likely case, hundreds of humans to do that.
And this is my point. And you can, rather than batch it, I think the thinking there would be automate elements of that, generate So condense that down through automation to create a smaller data set, but still one that is too, is too complicated for an individual to deal with, and then give that to your AI.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, next one. Your favorite type of experiment to run?
It's a very broad question. I need a better way to frame this and talk about it, because I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I just don't really have the right way to frame it. But I'm kind of obsessed with the principle of, like, what is no one else doing as a way to build journeys, and, like, using that as a sort of a way of building hypotheses or building changes for a website. What I mean by that is, if you are, if you look at sort of truly groundbreaking things for businesses to do or for brands to do, where they truly come up with something entirely unique, you're not really optimizing your way towards that. You might start with a really, like, basic, like, MVP and optimize the MVP, right? But you're not in a case where you're like, oh, we're going to iterate our way towards, how can I put this? Let's say you want to be an ethical, sustainable fashion brand. So one of the things that you decide that you might want to do is recycle people's old clothes. It's not something that exists. It's not something that anyone else is doing at the moment. You don't really have a framework for it. You have to build infrastructure around it. You have to figure out a way to do that. Well, that would probably still be a very cool thing if you did it and pulled it off. And also, no one else is doing it. It makes you entirely unique to do it. And I really like projects like that, and applying them in a safe and controlled experiment way. Whether you're doing that as, it doesn't necessarily have to be an A/B test, but whether you're doing that as a pilot group versus a control group or whatever, you can understand that through the methods of experimentation. But that is exciting because it's so much bigger, and it takes into its scope something much larger than just an element on a page changing shape, right? And so that's always really, really exciting to me, because usually you've identified a clear need or want or motivation or something that's driving that, which is like, I don't know. In the example I just used, it might be that you want to be an ethical clothing brand, but you are fundamentally, because you work in that sector, you're fundamentally and acutely aware of the sort of ecological harms around textile production. What can you do to change or offset that would also align perfectly with who you are as a brand? Might be something that you want to do, but your way of, like, addressing the contradiction between your business model and the place in which you work is an entirely unthought of, untested concept. And what you could do is put on a web page, we know this exists and we feel very bad about it. But the bigger way of solving that, a bigger way of addressing that, is a more broad and difficult and I think more interesting way of doing things.
Next to last question. One sentence you'd use to describe the future of ethical CRO or optimization.
Be really cheesy here, but I'm going to say another web is possible. The reason for the name of the company is that it is something that is possible to do. You're not trapped by the contradictions, inherent within running a business. There are businesses doing it and doing it very, very well, and also building long-term relationships with their customers off the back of it, right? And wanting to make the web a better place as a goal for people to live, shop, hang out, whatever your business model is absolutely possible to achieve.
Amazing. So, John, how can the people reach out to acquire your services or just to ask you any questions?
I can be found, you can email me at john@anotherwebisppossible.co.uk. You can go to www.anotherwebisppossible.co.uk. You can read some of the writing that I put out on there and also look through what our services are and how we offer them. You can reach out to me on there as well. We can book time to talk about your specific challenges. I'm pretty active on all social media platforms under the Another Web is Possible banner. LinkedIn gets a lot of content, but it's also on Facebook, it's also on Twitter, it's also on Instagram as well, so you can see the content there. I try to be active and maintain a big I maintain a feature on the No Web is Possible website about active conferences in the UK experimentation and UX space. I try to get to as many of those as I can. We can probably meet in person at those events if you are there. But yeah, any of those places, please reach out. You can also check out experimentos.io, which is the Experiment OS platform. We have a free tier. You can just go in and use that, see if it's for you. And another tool that I've built that we didn't even talk about, which is Praxis CRM. If you're an independent or small agency, I built an entirely free CRM tool that you can use and will be free forever. And I will never charge you for it. It doesn't even have a pricing tier. And it's also really good. And it's also entirely private. It's impossible for me to see any data that you put into it.
And I'll
And
make
that's
sure
on
to
your
get
tap praxiscrm.org. There you go.
thanks. And I'll make sure to get links from you for all of these and put it into the show notes. Make it easier for people to just click on through.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yep. Well, with this podcast, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. So thankfully, we are growing more. I probably should update this because we have definitely more subscribers than what's showing. But, it was just simple. Just keep it there. So I just want to thank the audience for joining us tonight on Digital After Dark. Matt, thank you for joining for the first one for 2026. And John, for taking time out for this episode, especially as I mentioned, we know that you had a really early start. It's now going to be a very early start now since it's now crossover midnight. But John reminds us that the web we have isn't the web we're stuck with, and that building something better starts with choosing respect over exploitation. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep imagining a web that puts people first. Good night, everyone.
Good night.